Hello there. I'm going to read out a short passage that is part of Saint Seraphim's testimony from Motovilov. Motovilov says, "I do not understand how I can be certain that I am in the Spirit of God. How can I discern for myself His true manifestation in me?" Father Seraphim replied, "I have already told you, Your Excellency, that it is very simple, and I've related in detail how people can come to be in the Spirit of God, and how we can recognize His presence in us. So what do you want, my son?" "I want to understand it well," I said. Then Father Seraphim took me very firmly by the shoulders and said, "We are both in the Spirit of God now, my son. Why don't you look at me?" I replied, "I cannot look, Father, because your eyes are flashing like lightning. Your face has become brighter than the sun, and my eyes ache with pain." Father Seraphim said, "Don't be alarmed, Your Excellency. Now you yourself have become as bright as I am. You are now in the fullness of the Spirit of God yourself. Otherwise you would not be able to see me as I am." Then bending his head towards me, he whispered softly in my ear, "Thank the Lord God for His unutterable mercy to us. You saw that I did not even cross myself, and only in my heart I prayed mentally to the Lord God and said within myself, 'Lord, grant him to see clearly with his bodily eyes that descent of thy Spirit which thou grantest to thy servants when thou art pleased to appear in the light of thy magnificent glory.' And you see, my son, the Lord instantly fulfilled the humble prayer of poor Seraphim. How then shall we not thank Him for this unspeakable gift to us both? Even to the greatest hermits, my son, the Lord God does not always show His mercy in this way. This grace of God, this loving Mother, has been pleased to comfort your contrite heart at the intercession of the Mother of God herself. But why, my son, do you not look at me in the eyes? Just look and don't be afraid, the Lord is with us." After these words I glanced at his face, and there came over me an even greater reverent awe. Imagine, in the centre of the sun, in the dazzling light of its midday rays, the face of a man talking to you. You see the movement of his lips and the changing expression of his eyes. You hear his voice. You feel someone holding your shoulders, yet you do not see his hands. You do not even see yourself or his figure, but only a blinding light spreading far around for several yards and illuminating with its glaring sheen both the snow blanket which covered the forest glade and the snowflakes which besprinkled me and the great elder. You can imagine the state I was in. "How do you feel now?" Father Seraphim asked me. "Extraordinarily well," I said. "But in what way? How exactly do you feel well?" I answered, "I feel such calmness and peace in my soul that no words can express it." "This, Your Excellency," said Father Seraphim, "is that peace of which the Lord said to His disciples, 'My peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. If you were of the world would love its own. But because I have chosen you out of this world, therefore the world hates you. I have overcome the world.'" There it is. That is the goal. This man, Saint Seraphim, living in the forest in Russia, he changed himself so greatly inside. People outside didn't know it. They couldn't see it. It's dangerous to show to others the changes inside of you that real work makes. Now, I saw once a book called The Prize is Eternity. It was written by some guy from some American fourth wave group. The prize is eternity sounds nice, but sounding nice and writing books and being illuminated inside are two different things. And those people who are doing the real work and who are changing inside are not writing books. They haven't got time for it. The world and its people are a great illusion. They make a great theatre. They talk of great things. Can you not see them every day talking about world peace whilst bombing this place? 10 years ago they were bombing another place. It's like they do not quite understand themselves, how insincere they are. They're not even insincere, they're so unconscious. In another place, St. Seraphim says, "Flee from men. Flee." There is no rhyme or reason to them. It's a crazy world because you cannot even criticize them. How can you criticize people who are so unconscious they don't know they're burning down their own house? I mean, you can't even feel sad for them. You can't even sympathize. What can you do? Truly, what can you do? Now, these souls on this planet who are not quite, they're like in the periodic table. At the bottom there are the heavy elements, which are radioactive. But just before them, there are a group of heavy elements that are not. But yet they are heavy. They have capacity, but they haven't quite exploded into life. They have grown, but they have not reached. And in this place, they have a mixture of all sorts of different intelligences functioning and make a huge mess. And they do not know what is going on. They do not understand. Mostly, and Gurdjieff talked about the value of symbols for people. They understand symbols. Some of the easiest symbols to understand are simply power and victimhood. They understand those symbols pretty well. In other words, when somebody comes along and they have power, then people will automatically kiss their ass. You know, if you think about the kind of symbols that people understand and recognize even today, then you're taking a journey through the history of the people. For instance, in Britain, there is an ancient skepticism. There's a kind of looking sideways and taking the piss. And it represents a certain kind of intelligence that has evolved in Britain, where you don't quite believe people. You can trust sailors in the pub. There's something very trustworthy about them. People who are ready to let go and have a laugh and not think too much of themselves. That is also a kind of symbol that has evolved in Britain. Probably if you go to Japan, they have different kinds of symbols. And through those symbols you can understand what that culture really is. It's quite interesting. I'm not an expert on these things, but I start to smell what it's about. And people evolve slowly. All the words in the world are not really what people are at. Sometimes I see people today, their heads look smaller. Their bodies are still strong, their legs, torso and arms, but their heads look smaller, as if there's not enough nourishment for the head anymore. And you can communicate to them, but only from the neck down. And they've kind of given up on the head for a while. There's no cultural nourishment. Gurdjieff taught a way that he had mastered over many years, and he said it had become a great suffering for him to master it, which was to separate I from it, particularly to separate his personality and its manifestations from his essence. He played roles on the outside, but inwardly did not identify. This means that he maintained a kind of tranquil inner identity, always, that was disconnected from how he expressed himself in the world. Sometimes he would fly into a rage. Sometimes he would act like a guru. Sometimes he would be meek if a policeman came. He would do whatever the situation required it. He would play a role like an actor playing one role after another, always inwardly not identifying. This is not something that I have done a lot of. I wonder how many people actually action this kind of work. I think you need to be quite brutal in order to do it, because you become very much aware of a particular sacrifice. In other words, you cannot smile when everybody's smiling, and when your instinct tells you to smile, you actually have to start controlling your personality and treating your personality as a kind of machine. And so you become a renunciate. You give up on being a normal person. For most people, spiritual work slips easily into their normal life. They read a few books, try a few exercises, go to a few retreats, but they do not commit. The Gurdjieff is committed. He has abandoned the normal human manifestations. He's a brave man. And in so doing, separating his essence, his tranquil inner objectivity from this person that he is supposed to be, that people expect him to be, that has to interact with the outside, that has to laugh and lie and drink and cry as the situation calls for it. He does that. The spiritual value of that is that you're working against the personality. You could do that even if you are in the gulag in Siberia. It is the kind of spirituality of last recourse. For only very cunning people could do this. This kind of spirituality you could do if you were in a communist prison, if you worked in a brothel, if you worked in hell, you could still do that. Most spirituality is not that tough. Most spirituality involves having some sort of nice situation. You go to a temple and there are cherry trees blooming, and you can walk in the garden and be peaceful. That's how most spirituality is done, but not Gurdjieff's. Gurdjieff's is a spirituality for a very insincere kind of world, where people are scared, society is upside down, and yet you can work. But the one thing that has become obvious to me is that there is nothing really wrong with our personality. Although you can use it in the way Gurdjieff uses it, and you get the results that Gurdjieff gets, it is actually not true to say that our personality is wrong or evil or should be used this way. This is not really an ideal way to use the personality. It is a technique of last resort when the society or the whole world you live in is in a very bad state of decay. This is not really the right way, because everything from your physical body to the personality can become illuminated. It can. The light of your essence, the I am, can permeate and penetrate every molecule of your being, every molecule of your personality, and your soul can expand to include everything. And then you become the true master, a multi-level master.